Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. Quick reminder, support the podcast. Your support is crucial, and the best way to do that is by becoming a subscriber, a paid subscriber on the Substack. We do private weekly group Zoom chats every week or two to discuss current events and just shoot the breeze. I also do a weekly write-up of the news, my own commentary and an analysis only for members only, as well as I bring back past podcast guests on occasion to do a live Q&A for supporters only. You can also donate, send me some money through Buy Me a Coffee, Donor Box, Wise. All the options are on the website. You can send me Bitcoin. It'd be a great time to send me some Bitcoin. You can also purchase a consult if you want to chat with me about expatriation, geopolitics, or the meaning of life, whatever you like. And do check out all of my affiliates. EasyDNS, Wise Wolf Gold. Above Phone is having a sale right now for de-Googled phones. You can check out Legal Shield, Escape the Technocracy, and my newest sponsor, which is Societatis Civis. They've got apps to help you obtain citizenship if you are of Croatian, Polish, or Italian heritage. So check them out. Leave a podcast review. And joining us for the first time is poet, musician, gypsy, dissident, Florida-based dystopian sound alchemist, Tesstamona. Welcome to Geopolitics and Empire, Tess.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. And I only learned of your work a week ago. A listener of mine sent me a link to your new song and music video, Algorithm Ghetto. And we'll talk about that. Which it completely blew my mind. But before getting into Algorithm Ghetto, and sort of the themes that you talk about, if you want to tell us a bit about, who is Tesstamona, your music, and your work.
Absolutely, yes. So I think you definitely nailed it with the intro. But essentially, I have been writing poetry since I was 10, and I have been making music. It was after I got sober from a drug addiction at the age of 20. The music came into the picture. And that has been a big thing that has kept me alive and on the path that I'm on ever since. But essentially, aside from all of that, I am a lover of the human spirit and the evolution of the human soul. So by default, in today's world, that will make you a dissident. And so I use, whether it is music, poetry, writing on Substack, or just speech in general, my primary goal really is just the liberation from the current conditions that we are in, and getting back to true connection, as opposed to this synthetic reality that so many of us are a part of, because I view the lack of connection within ourselves and one another as the root of pretty much all human suffering. So that is what I'm about in short.
All right. And then I guess the next question would be the current condition, as you mentioned, that we're in. I always like to get one of the first questions I ask my guests is, how they view the world, the problems that they're seeing. I focus a lot on world government, right? This push towards a totalitarian world state, a global dystopia, the algorithm ghetto, the wars that are going on, all these different forms of tyranny, the neo-feudalism that they're trying to push us in, destroy the Black Rocks of the world, destroying the middle class. And I was checking out, I subscribe to your Spotify. I subscribe to you everywhere. So listeners should subscribe to you everywhere they can find you, X, Substack, Spotify. And, you've got a song called Quarantine Blues. And so just your sort of thoughts on some of these themes, what's going on in the world, what's wrong with the world.
That is a hard thing to say in short. As far as just kind of what you mentioned, with Algorithm Ghetto or Quarantine Blues in general, I mean, what we see now, what everybody knows of is, yes, Agenda 2030 and the push toward the total automation of society, to where essentially the way I see it is we're all getting pushed into what is being built around us, these open air prisons, smart cities, with the weaponization of information and propaganda tactics. I feel like it's honestly like living in an open air psych ward right now is really how it feels. It seems like there is a collective Stockholm syndrome going on. And I think I am of the belief that it is actually causing real brain damage, as far as the fear campaigns, the divide and conquer tactics, the amount of exposure to radiation in all of its forms, the EMF, Wi-Fi, 5G, anything, and then things we don't know of as well. I think it's sort of eroding people's sense of who they are or who they have been, people's sovereignty within their own individuality. And so we are seeing this collective morphing into tribalism, I suppose you could say. But it's so hard to just narrow it down to only one problem. I mean, we are being ushered rapidly into I guess that was the whole goal, wasn't it, of inventing the internet and the computer and this technology, is to automate society so it is akin to what I've heard it referenced in certain documents as a shoe factory, but essentially just turning people into mindless cattle, of course, with a mild hierarchy so they don't all revolt, but complete automation so that there is no more humanity anymore. And that's my concern. I do not want to see us eradicated into the machine and into nothingness. And I don't think it's too late, but I think we are unbelievably close to the edge.
Yeah, I think the hour is getting late, and I would agree with you. I've come to the conclusion, we look at who created the internet, DARPA, who created GPS, DARPA. I think because of the CIA, we've got Google Earth now, and with the word itself, web. I think all of these, from their inception, their true intent was to create this global dystopia, and then again, we're being deplatformed. I've mentioned before, the Department of Homeland Security has banned me from PayPal. I'm taken off of Patreon. People are being debanked now. I couldn't renew my bank debit card last month here in Mexico because they want me to use the digital ID, which the UN just talked about, where they said they want everyone to link their bank accounts to their digital ID. And the walls are really, I feel, closing in. And I actually live in a smart city. So I was shocked to discover I was living in Kazakhstan until 2020. When I came back to Mexico, Guadalajara, I learned that Guadalajara is a resilient city. And I'm like, what is this? And I found the white papers from the government's website that said resilient cities are basically smart cities. They're financed by the Rockefeller Foundation, and they work with Visa and all UN. You name all of the usual suspects. They want a cashless system. They want pre-crime AI. They want to take away your cars. It's total insanity. And for me, this is the most important subject, because I'm starting to feel it now. I'm being restricted already. I don't know what else is important, because my ability to live normally is now being restricted. And this is just the beginning. I like to say some of us are beta testers for the mark of the beast. And so, your further thoughts on this and sort of your inspiration for Algorithm Ghetto. Like I've mentioned before, I had Edwin Black on 2020. He's a renowned Jewish American historian. And I believe he coined the phrase, and you inadvertently sort of, it came to you through your muse, I don't know, somehow, because he compares this Algorithm Ghetto to the physical ghettos in Germany that Jews were put into. And now he's saying the same thing is happening to all of us, except digitally. So we'll be put in, as you said, on these digital farms. And if you misbehave, they just shut off. And there's geolocation. If you go off the farm too far, you can't use your money because it's a cashless system. So your further thoughts there.
I mean, yeah, I would agree. I thought it was wild, when you had sent me that video from 2020, because when I wrote Algorithm Ghetto, it was actually, I think, the end of 2022 or early 2023. And I had not heard that term before. And what had spawned it, besides, my fundamental belief of it's the job of the artist to tell the truth of the times they live in. I think if somebody is making music or writing or poetry or journalist, certainly, you're doing an unbelievable disservice if, we're living in the times that we're living in and you're creating stuff that, it's kind of like the concept of the band that kept playing as the Titanic sank, in theory. It's not helpful at all. I think it's counter. So I began writing that. Really what spawned it was I was getting censored everywhere as well. Certainly not to the lengths that you have experienced, being debanked and having the issues that you have had throughout the years, because I did read up on some of the things that you've done and also experienced consequently for that. But I was speaking with somebody because I had been censored for a few years at that point, and as someone who wanted to get these messages out, it felt like every time I would release anything, no matter the platform, no matter if I switched accounts, no matter anything, it was like dropping it into a void. Because sure, you might be able to still be there, but they can just mute you so nobody can see it. It doesn't even matter if you have X amount of followers, if nobody sees it. And unfortunately, most people get all of their content and information from the machine. So you have to go in there as of now. And so I was consulting with somebody on the matter, and he looked at my accounts, and he's, experienced with this kind of stuff. And he was like, honestly, for you, I think you need to change your artist name. I think you need to start over completely, like all new accounts, different name, different identity, which at the time, felt really heavy because I'm like, well, I've been, putting music out and writing and podcasting under this name for a long time, but hey, if it means I get to talk, maybe. And so I looked in on how to actually do that. And long story short, I discovered I could not, that there wasn't a way to just wipe my identity or somehow sidestep, just because the degree to which the spyware has evolved, whether it comes to whole device data harvesting, whether it comes to, facial recognition, whether it's the scope at which optogenetics, one, focuses or affects us, but two, what kind of data is that gathering based on our eye movements, or the rate at which we talk, how we type when we're using these devices. And so it went down a rabbit hole. I talked to several people who have been deplatformed and heard the lengths they had to go to, and it still wasn't very effective. So I was just like, my way of, I guess, processing that at the time feeling of hopelessness, honestly, was writing this song, and the lyrics just came out. At first it was sort of in freestyle form, but that was the first thing that came out of my mouth, which actually it didn't make the final cut of the song. I changed it, but the first thing that came out of my mouth was, I feel like a digital prisoner in an algorithm ghetto. And I remember comparing it to my past life, because when I was younger, I was an actual criminal, and not just a thought criminal, but a real one. And I was involved with some bad stuff, again, much younger. But I thought about that, and I'm like, it was easier to hide from the police and do all kinds of bad stuff back then than it is to just talk on the internet now without getting shut down, or without being muted, or having your content removed. How it better than I do, but that was just mind blowing to me that I would have to go to crazy lengths and pretty much change my voice and the way I talk, and always wear a ski mask if I even wanted to have a slight chance at it. So I did not change my artist name, but that's where Algorithm Ghetto came up, just because it felt like just living in a prison and a total wasteland, really. And I talked about that in a song titled Wasteland as well, but that was a bit earlier on. So hopefully that answers that, about how that phrasing came to me.
And again, like, I don't give, what do you call it? Compliments unless I really mean them generally. But when I heard this, a listener, people send me stuff all the time, and a lot of the time it's just wacky stuff. But listeners then send me stuff that's good, and so I kind of look at everything, and I'm just thinking, okay, well, I'll check this out. And then I was like, I literally, when I opened the link to your music video, the hair was standing on the back of my neck. Like, I couldn't believe it. First of all, the song is amazing. It's on point. And then the music video is like MTV quality. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it really captured the visuals and the other things that you're saying in the song. So it really, for me, like, captured what I've been obsessing about for the past 4 years, and I couldn't believe it. Somebody actually put that into art form, and just your thought on the music video. How was creating that?
It was actually, well, thank you first off, for even giving it a watch and a listen with the amount of information that's in front of our face every single day. It's not a small feat. So thank you. The music video was actually very simple as far as shooting it. Like as far as I didn't want it to be about me because it's not. So I didn't make it a typical performance video, but any of the shots that I'm in was actually filmed right here in my apartment. We just used lighting to make it seem like there was a backdrop, but it was filmed in my bedroom. So it's just me sitting on what was actually a piano bench and just saying the lyrics. But what I really wanted to do to visually storytell what I was saying, because you really can't do that if it's just me in front of the camera. So I wanted to kind of make the feature the essentially the B-roll footage that we used. And so that was a bit more of a tedious process because you got to be really careful. I was very, very nervous releasing the song itself because my distributor's content team flagged it before just the audio was even allowed to be released. So I had to argue with TuneCore for a while to get that to somehow go away. And then the song came out audio, and I was like, thank God, although they did restrict or ban the spoken word poetry version to the United States in Spotify. I don't know, that's a whole nother thing. But the music video I wanted to be careful about because I've had stuff removed there. So that looked like getting appropriate B-roll footage that could illustrate exactly what I was saying, but not too far to where they could have an excuse to take it down, whether it might be copyright stuff. So like nothing with news logos, nothing with certain words because YouTube will remove it. There is some footage that was taken from the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos in the video. That was probably my only concern in uploading it was, shit, are they going to flag that? And so far they have not. So I'm grateful for that, but it was mostly just hunting for appropriate real world footage to show people what I mean. Because there are people like you, obviously, who already understand it, but I released it like right around the election because of the amount of fighting between people. And I wanted to just show them like, this is what has been happening. And this is what is literally happening now. Like your neighbor is not your enemy ever. And so I had to be able to show that to people that have their identities with both sides and not peg myself on either side because I'm not on either side. But yeah, so that was probably the most intense part about making the video was being very, very careful with what footage was selected, both to avoid censorship and also to try to make it as helpful as possible to as many people as possible.
I want to go back for a second to what you mentioned, how you got into trouble when you were younger, cops and all that, and crime, and I viewed that like the analog world. And I vividly remember, growing up in the 80s and 90s, and I moved back and forth between, I remember visiting my parents' homeland, Croatia, but it was still Yugoslavia at the time. And then we moved back and forth a couple times. And I think in the late 90s when I was in junior high, I think it was a compact computer, and I started using the internet from the beginning. But I still remember a time before computers, before the internet, before smartphones, like the analog world. And I felt we were generally freer. And as you say, it was easier to get away from the system. And now, like, for example, Europe next year, to go to Europe, if you're a non-European, they have an entry-exit system. You have to fill out a social credit form. You got to pay 10 euros. Canada's starting to do the same thing. And so, members of my family, I have to fill out these forms. They could be denied, so we won't be able to go to Europe anymore. And it just feels like what you already mentioned, getting debanked, and all these other restrictions, not being able to work, right, because of COVID stuff or travel. And you were on Greg Reese's podcast recently. I like his work, and he's lately been talking about Black Pill. I've had I don't know if you know Legal Man. I've had him on the show. He's the star of Jones Plantation film, and he uses the term cyanide pilled. I'm pretty,
Ooh.
I'm pretty myself. I'm pretty cyanide pilled. My white pill, because I believe in Jesus. So I always say my white pill is Jesus and God. But on the earthly realm, I mean, you said it yourself. Things are getting very bad. What are your thoughts on? For me, it's very all encompassing, this digital prison, because before, in the analog world, you could always escape. You could escape from one country to another. You could escape the Soviet Union, and now it's like this is global. And so your thoughts on that, and then these ideas of red pills, black pills, white pills.
Yeah, well, in Greg Reese's defense, I do not think that he is black pilled. I know that came from criticism on X because everybody wanted to be very, very excited about the new alleged regime. And I saw Greg telling the truth, really. I mean, I even had a friend text me and he said, Greg Reese is going off about Trump and Musk on X. And I'm like, God, do I have to get on X to look at what you're saying? And I looked and I texted my friend back and I was like, he's right. Like, I don't think he's going off. Like, that's correct. And then me and my friend had a back and forth. But I appreciate this so much about this friend is we could have an actual, it did turn in a bit heated debate. It never, ever turned into personal attacks. And then there was a resolve. And so it was actually a productive conversation. I understand people wanting to have hope. I just think this desire to have a savior is lethal, infantile at best. And I've heard this digital ghetto, the algorithm ghetto, be described by people who documented this social engineering plans as the artificial womb. And so they are playing on human instincts of always wanting safety, surety, security, but there is a price for that. And I think people are very terrified of sovereignty and freedom because that also implies that we have to learn how to trust ourselves. And from the jump, we are all indoctrinated to never go within for answers. Everything that we are taught to seek from day one is always outside of ourselves. So that concept, which I've talked about, sometimes is received like I am suggesting we all jump off of a cliff. I mean, people are horrified by the idea that we can be self-governing. So that's one thing. I might have gotten off topic there, but to get back to the red pill, blue pill, black pill, cyanide pill is actually very interesting. I like that. I have gone too far down the rabbit hole and felt what people say is black pilled as well, which is just like dark, hopeless, like just it's so erosive. It's a horrible place to be. I don't think that Greg's commentary on X is black pill. I think he's just telling the truth of like, hey, don't let your guard down, you guys. Like sorry, but you can't go back to sleep. I agree with that sentiment. But you mentioned your faith in Christ, and I think that I'm so glad that you did. By the way, thank you. I think that is tremendous because that's honestly my answer. I believe that the revolution and the way through is a spiritual one. And for me, how could I ever help somebody else if I cannot get free within myself? And that's kind of the only area that they can't touch, really. Like nobody, no human can get in between me and the connection to the force, that which I call God, or to the spirit that I call Christ. Everybody will have their own journey in the realm of the spirit. I understand everyone has different views and beliefs. I don't push mine on anybody, but I've had a pretty long journey when it comes to walking in the realm of the spirit and trying to learn how to connect. And for me, that is ultimately the solution, because if we at our current state of consciousness could fix this, we would have done it already. And so I think that there is, I think we are all being asked to evolve. I have somebody I consult with on a spiritual level, and he flat out, very bluntly says, grow or die. Those are your only options. And so I do believe that, just because I might not have, or we might not have the answers of how to fix this right now. It doesn't mean they don't exist. I just think that more evolution and growth is called for on an individual basis before we're even able to come together as a people effectively, because we see what that looks like right now, and it's not super effective. I mean, it's better than nothing, but I mean, as well as anybody, the challenges that we're all dealing with right now of even just being on the same page of anything. So.
And just because you mentioned the spiritual aspect, I had an interaction with a listener the other day on Telegram. And again, you get a segment of people who say, it's the Jews and they won't shut up. And my response was quoting from Ephesians, which says, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And so you could just, even if it wasn't the Jews, it'd be some other group. And it's not, at the end of the day, it's these otherworldly forces, and, that all becomes a moot point. And just, if you have any thoughts on that, but also, who do you think runs the world? Catherine Austin Fitz says Mr. Global. I like Mark Passio's term, the occultocracy. I think it's just a smorgasbord of these elite elite families that have been around for millennia. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything for sure, because I don't know for sure. When it comes, I mean, I agree with, first off, what you said from Ephesians. I think that was the more eloquent way of saying what I said in the song of it. When they tell you to hate your neighbor, they're asking you for your slave labor, because that's exactly how I see it. When it comes to the big they, right? Like who is, I mean, I think that if, let's look at the World Economic Forum, and they are unbelievably public with what their intentions are, what their agenda is. It's not a secret. People just need to read or choose to give some of their currency, that is their attention, to that, as opposed to these dopamine slot machine Babylonian rectangles of death that we call a cell phone, to look into it. But that's kind of a big ask these days, apparently. I mean, I would say surely, those people have self-identified as being that. I don't know what every single person's history is that's affiliated with this plan. But that would be one of them. Anybody who has the interest in the automation of society and the mechanical synthetic replica of nature, of consciousness, of humanity, that is by definition satanic, because it's the opposition of humanity itself, of life. And so anybody who is of that motivation or philosophy, which absolutely there are dark occultists that 100% would align with that. And there are many, many names that one could use for someone who's allied with that. It just kind of depends on what school of thought you studied or whatever. That's what makes this so complicated too, is we have a million names for the same thing. And it becomes harder to call it out as a result. But do I believe that it's one religious group? No, I don't. Could there be perversions of certain religions that might advocate for this? Of course, there are. But you also don't need it to be within religion to have this perversion, because that exists everywhere. It's anywhere that there are humans, basically. You're liable to have that. But I don't have the answer for who I think it is, other than what I just said. So,
and just your thought. I mean, Elon Musk tweeted, was it yesterday, a new philosophy. Well, first he's quote tweeting himself. First he said, a new philosophy of the future is needed. I believe it should be curiosity about the universe, expand humanity to become a multi-planet, then interstellar species to see what's out there. Then he says, a new philosophy that is compatible with most existing belief systems. And then we had Bill Gates in an interview just a few weeks back talk about a new religion. And I think that's related to what you're talking about. These people, that this transhumanist ideology, so they're trying to create, a new sort of religion to get us all into where they're trying to take us. And I wanted to step back for a moment because you mentioned the U.S. election. Trump And normies, I've never seen again in my life in the United States such polarization. Democrats, Republicans, where you can't, there's people going on people's lawns and taking signs and attacking others and killing, others for this political civil religion. It's insane. And so I would say the programming, they've done a great job. No, like with this MK Ultra psychological operations, where there's people that I know who I've seen them from the 2000 teens onward, like the last 10, 15 years, particularly, they've changed their values and become more aligned with official narratives, sort of inadvertently, just, through the TV, social media, the Black Mirror, the smartphones. And so your thoughts on this, you sing about it, right? That we need to love each other. I don't want to hate any people group. I've been to Israel. Why should I hate Jews? Why should I hate Muslims? There's a section of alt media saying the Muslims are evil. I'm like, what did Jesus say? Love your enemy. I don't want to hate any other ethnic or people group. And so the thoughts on that, and then how to wake people up. Your thoughts on people who are still called NPCs or normies.
Oof, yeah, that is the $1 million question, isn't it? So yeah, I'll back up. As far as the division, yes, I have seen that on a shocking level, especially 2020, because I live in Florida now. This is not where I'm from. I have family here, but I grew up on the West Coast, so Pacific Northwest, Oregon. Very, very, and I hate using these terms because I feel like I'm just feeding into these these constructs, but it is a very, very leftist at this point, I would say, like extreme polarized area. And when the lockdowns happened, I was living in Los Angeles, and that was an absolute nightmare that it's just not talked about because a lot of people don't even know what happened there. And when I eventually got out and went back up to Oregon, I discovered the fear virus. I would say that was the true infection of the mind, was unlike anything I had ever seen. Like people I have known my entire life, I've never seen that look in their eyes. I had people wishing death on me because I would not take the jab. I was not welcome in places I had always been. You could not enter public spaces without your papers. You couldn't get a job. I had one other friend there that also did not partake in the jab. She lost housing over it. I lost housing, I think twice in that time. So me and her both struggled quite a bit. That's why I do not live there anymore. But I have seen how just the fact that your own family and friends that you've known your whole life can turn on you that fast because of two things, right? Isolation and then put in front of the talking head. And it's just like that. It's as if your entire life history with them is wiped and you are the enemy. And so very much so, I understand that. And that's why I released Algorithm Ghetto now, is because I was really afraid that this situation currently was going to escalate into widespread domestic violence. And so that's why, because originally I wasn't going to release it till 2025. And then as far as how does one wake people up? Did you ask an additional question in that?
Just how do you sense where we are now in terms of people realizing what's going on? There's people, some that I've interviewed or people have told me off the record or people that I know that COVID 1984, as I like to call it, really woke them up. And so how do you sort of see the battlefield? Have you seen a lot of people have woken up or not? And then how do we sort of go about that?
So in the last couple years, I would say yes, especially as far as organization, like away from the internet, right? I saw a lot of that when I lived in Tennessee and got to be exposed to whole communities that are effectively living parallel but separate from the system. And that was very eye-opening to me that people were already in that solution. So in one respect, yes. But the rest, I don't know. I mean, it seems like everybody still has their blind spot. And I think a lot of that was shown when Trump was selected or elected, whatever you want to call it, right? He was, he's the new face, allegedly. And when that happened, I was personally really shocked because a lot of people that I thought could see through all the bullshit, to them that was like, oh, now everything's perfect and this is our savior. And I'm like, really? With the transhumanist brain chip guy, like right up in this is good to you? I mean, because I actually do want to touch on that, but I'm just trying to answer the questions first. I don't know. I think there are people that are awake, and whatever that means, right? Just generally not hypnotized by the gladiator games. Let's just say that. I think there are even more people that are on the edge. And I want to touch on that. What I thought was interesting when Algorithm Ghetto came out was I saw people, some that I knew and some that I did not know. They're just people on the internet I've never met, that I could see were ideologically subscribed to both sides, but that message was resonating with both. And so to me, that is a positive indicator that people underneath all of this spin are at least in their heart recognizing that this is wrong to be living in so much inner conflict and chaos. And it's just, I mean, it's madness. And why are we doing it? Is this really what we want? But I don't know, when it comes to how do we wake more people up and the concept of NPCs, this might be a little bit more dark. I used to believe that, or at least have the hope that, like, yes, we can wake everybody up. I'm not sure if everybody can, because at the end of the day, every human being has free will. And I don't know that everybody wants to wake up. And I have seen that. And I have also seen so much damage done to an individual by way of, we could just say trauma, from so many different angles, that I think when people refer to NPCs, it's like people on airplane mode or just autopilot, where it's like you talk to them and I'm trying to find if there's anybody even in there. Like, where's the light in your eyes? What's going on? I think that for people who are in that situation, I have no idea how to remedy that in this life, at least. Like, I'm not sure if every single being in a human body on Earth in present day has awakening within this collective dream in the cards. I don't know, because I've seen some cases where things have become so severe for that individual that it's like something else is in there. Does that make sense? Like, something besides their soul, like something else is in there. And in my experience, it has often been something very malicious, like being in the presence of it, especially. So I don't know if it's even possible for everyone, but I also don't think we need literally everyone. I mean, what's the critical mass for things to really shift at this stage of the game? And with our population size, I think would be interesting to look at, because I don't think it would take much, Yeah,
I would actually agree with what you said. You made me think that I think there will always be a portion of people that will remain a blue pill, to use Matrix terms. There's even a quote from the Bible, which I can't recall right now, but it basically speaks about, God created us, and so he does with us what he wishes, and that some clay pot, we are like clay, that has been molded. Some clay pots were made, as works of art, finished, and then others for destruction. And so that kind of parallels what you're saying, that there will always be a group of people that just don't wake up for whatever reason. And the critical mass, as you say, it could be just single digit percentages or double digit percentages. I want to go back to just what you mentioned on Trump and Musk. I don't buy it. I personally believe that Trump is the face of the new world order, and Musk and this sort of, and I've just been here with my jaw dropping, seeing people like Alex Jones get fully on board with the Trump train. For me, he's like the new Fox News now. And I'm like, I sort of woke up with, all these folks, not just Alex Jones, but InfoWars, Edward Griffin's Federal Reserve, Ron Paul, many different, LaRouche, Michel Chossudovsky, Voltaire Network in France, and reading just all these different sources, learning about reality. And I just feel like Trump is going to bring in the real new world order and the technocracy. And he's got this wrecking crew of Ramaswamy and Musk. And I think they're going to bring in technocracy and so I've just stopped after COVID. I'm a citizen of 3 countries, and I just stopped voting after COVID once I realized that all governments on the planet, the US, the Mexican, the Croatian, I was in Kazakhstan, they overruled their own constitutions and implemented martial law. And then I see like all the governors here in Mexico, they're all implementing globalist projects. So it's like, what's even the point of voting? Even we had the Mexican elections recently. All 3 parties were for North American and Union lockdowns, passports. They're meeting with Klaus Schwab, going to the World Economic Forum. You're just selecting the manager who's going to be the best manager for the program that's already being deployed. So just your thoughts on voting and the whole Trump, this new Trump administration.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do agree. I think it's voting for which brand of boot do you want on your neck. Essential. That is what I think. I typically don't vote. And also I don't like giving my consent to being ruled over. Although I do understand being in a situation of like thinking, okay, how do we buy ourselves more time? Like the whole thinking, the thought of lesser of 2 evils, maybe one face or alleged regime scares the shit out of somebody more than the other. So like, I understand, because I think a lot of people were doing that. And I completely understand that, because I've done that before too. I regret it though, because at the end of the day, it's the same thing. Nobody gets to that place, even in local politics, without being part of this global agenda. You cannot be there. So at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter. And now if we look at this new alleged, and I say alleged, right, because they're not in there yet, and we know, I don't know what the hell is going to happen from now to January, but this new alleged administration with Musk involved, I am not happy about that at all. Because so I didn't see the tweet or whatever they're calling it now, the post on X that he made. I want to ask you a question really quick. Are you familiar with Rudolf Steiner or or Ahriman, the Ahrimanic prophecy?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm vaguely. I haven't read his books, but yeah, I've known about Rudolf Steiner and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and I am by no means an expert on his lectures. I understand he left behind 27,000. I have a lot of, reading to do between him and Ben Saduno. I love his work, but Steiner, when he talks about, the spirit, the Ahrimanic spirit, incarnating here on Earth, and it's literally AI, and it's literally this technocracy. That's exactly what the Ahrimanic impulse or spirit is. And he prophesied this a very long time ago. And it was exactly what you just said about that tweet. That's kind of why I had that wide-eyed reaction, because I didn't see that, where it's this new young face that's going to come in and has these modern, solutions that are, again, like, what did you say? Like some one world religion that works for everybody.
Musk said yesterday, a new philosophy that is compatible with most existing belief systems. So that's like a universalist. Baha'is sort of believe that, and they have to get rid of any beliefs like Christian or maybe a few others, strains of Islam that are exclusive, that say, the only way to God is through Christ. And what these guys are saying, they want to sort of patchwork everything all together to get humanity on board with this project, what you're talking about, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So that's very eerie, because I have the book. It's not within reach, so I can't pull it out and quote it. So I'm going to be careful, because I don't want to misquote anything. But he does talk about, he prophesied, and this was over 100 years ago. He said when Ahriman does come and incarnate, whether it be in human form or perhaps, I've already heard that they have already created a full AI human, like fully conscious, its own thing. Whether it comes in either form, this person is, essentially going to be talking like that. And people are just going to get behind him and think it's, the greatest thing ever. They're going to be led toward all these different philosophies. And that's essentially going to be the beginning of it. And then it's up to the people, because there are instructions for how to deal with it. But the biggest thing is learning how to spot it and call it out. And allegedly it's part of the collective evolution of the human spirit. Not everybody is going to choose to evolve away from it. Some people will choose to go that route. And so there's a lot of talk about there being kind of a split in consciousness in general as far as the direction that humanity goes. Obviously, I can't prove any of this because this is future speculation and I'm not the one who prophesied this, but that's what a lot of this looks like to me, in all honesty, is that.
Yeah, just to complement that, I talk a lot about Lucifer Publishing, which became Lucius Trust, who they work. You had Blavatsky in the 1900s, who had Lucifer Magazine, Theosophy, and then I've been to Lucius Trust's headquarters in Geneva. This is a 2009 pamphlet where I went to their meeting, and they talk about. Losing my train of thought here. What you were? Oh, right. They talk about how Lucifer is the Christ or the Messiah to all religions. He's the Mahdi to the Muslims, the Maitreya to the Eastern religions, and that this Lucifer Promethean figure is here now. And that they say in their own words, their newsletters, that all of these cycles of conferences, World Economic Forum conferences, UN conferences, are preparations for unveiling what they call this coming one. So you've got Lucius Trust, that correlates to what you're talking about, Steiner and others. And so it's just, it's fascinating. I guess, I didn't want to add, I have a few more questions, but are there other themes that you think are important or that you are interested in related to what we're talking about or not?
Well, I mean, definitely. I mean, what you just brought up is very interesting. I mean, for me, I really do resonate with a lot of anthroposophy, which I guess we would call it esoteric Christianity, or that is what you would probably call it. But that's interesting that they are saying that, Lucifer is supposedly Messiah and all of these, because I mean, and again, I can't verify any of this. But allegedly, the Lucifer and Luciferic beings and that impulse came first, and then the Christ spirit came, and now Ahriman. But when it comes to any of these energies or spirits it's within the human being too. So it's external, but we also have these, we could call them impulses within us. So even just examining the difference between Lucifer versus Ahriman, in both cases, it's a trap. You're being led away from your humanity intentionally. Both, but they just have a different method of doing it. And if one is being used, because Christ is supposed to be the middle way and the balancing out and the way out of that, through and out of that kind of, what would you call that? A dichotomy of extremes and or evil. I mean, I don't know. I'm not the expert on anthroposophy by far, but it is something that I study very much. But I am a beginner at best. So that would probably be the final point I would make, is just it's very interesting to look at the older predictions about the time that we are currently in.
And to get back to music, because I've had on the podcast 5 Times August. Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with Brad Skistamas, 5 Times August.
5 Times August?
Yeah, he grew to fame during COVID, making anti-lockdown music, and I've met him, I think, at least twice. But just your thoughts on how so many rock and roll and punk and other musicians folded. Rage Against the Machine they're now raging with the machine. Bruce Springsteen, Foo Fighters, the Canadian, what's his name? I can't even remember his name. Neil Young and so many others. What's your sort of explanation of why these guys who used to be dissident musicians just they became part of the corporate blob, and I guess they're just defending their paycheck now or and status and position. Why do you think so many rock musicians, I mean, musicians folded?
Yeah, it's a big problem. And it honestly continues to shock me how unwelcome lyrics like this are in the music space, whether it's other artists or music bloggers, journalists, playlisters, which are often gatekeepers on, platforms like Spotify, where the majority of people are getting their music, especially in the United States. I've had them tell me behind the scenes, not all of them, but quite a bit of like, hey, I agree with this, or I'm glad that you're talking about it, but I can't be involved with it, or I can't share it or be aligned with it because it's not what my audience wants. And so in one respect, it's really ass backwards. Like, when did it become the artist's job to give people what they want? That's an entertainer, not an artist. Then there is a difference. But when did it become our job to appease the masses? I mean, that's insane. Like, tell the truth. That's what you're supposed to do, in my opinion. As far as why we have seen folding on such a massive level, I'm not sure if it is just so, I mean, they're human too, right? So perhaps this mind control legitimately worked on them the same way we see it. And so they believe it. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that they're trying to protect their standing and their fan base and their career and their income. That's another possibility, although that sounds like prostitution to me. But if somebody can live with that, okay. And then there's another potential explanation, which people are familiar with, but the usage of or the presence of people with ties to MK Ultra, like the actual CIA project in the music industry. I remember I started reading up on it, but like even in the 60s, like with that whole movement, the amount of musicians that were the face of, what was it, like Flower Child or Flower Power, like that whole thing. They all came from military families or intelligence families.
It took me many months, but I literally like 2 weeks ago finished reading that book by Dave McGowan on Laurel Canyon. And
yes.
mind blowing. And it's like he talks about how Jim Morrison and The Doors, like they couldn't play music. Many of these guys couldn't even play music. In Jim Morrison himself, he cites how like the songs were already written before they formed, and all of their parents were like naval military intelligence. And just like, what is occult stuff going on? Like, what is going on? So I think, yeah, that probably is related, no?
Yeah, I mean, if it was, if it was so widespread to where an entire movement was literally orchestrated by the CIA and its related branches, especially with the involvement of people that come from MK Ultra scientists, these are their offspring going in and doing this, then why would that not still be going on? So sometimes I wonder, I mean, I don't know, because I'm not in the industry. Surely not on that level. Like I release music, I'm not signed to a label. I've never been in any of these. I've never been around any of these people. So I don't know. But I do wonder, because it's very interesting to me, how often certain individuals that for one way or another decide to not comply with how dirty the industry is, they wind up suicided, they wind up overdosed. And it's like, really, all of them, you know what I mean? It's just kind of, so I wonder what, I don't know what kind of technologies they might have as far as keeping their mouthpieces in line, but they are very, very aware of the power of sound and frequency and messaging in that delivery vehicle, which is, I think, why there is so much emphasis on controlling music as industry, art in general, but absolutely music. I mean, you can start a revolution with music. You can also brainwash everybody into their own self-destruction with music. I mean, we're seeing that right now, whether it's just like the glorification of like, taking drugs that kill people, usually round one, or several other things. So I would say somewhere in between that scale of maybe they themselves drank the Kool-Aid all the way up to MK Ultra victim or MK Ultra administrator,
I just found a clip of Kraftwerk, that German band in the 70s, and there was a video of them, one of their very early performances, and they were like the beginning of this sort of electro techno sort of music, electronic music. And then I saw a video last week, subsequently, a guy who created, it was actually a pleasant song. So he created a music video and a song using only AI. And I gotta admit, like the lyrics and the song with acoustic guitar was actually kind of nice. And I just feel like a lot of that is related to what we were talking about earlier, where we are in this algorithm ghetto, this transhuman thing, that I think a lot of that music, its evolution was directed as part of a way of sort of, what's the word, initiating us into this technetronic age, as Zbigniew Brzezinski would say. If you have any thought on that, and then I also did want to ask you, when it comes to in terms of making music, the whole Great Reset agenda of the neo feudalism. Like I feel like I'm starting to feel this neo feudalism where housing is expensive, everything's inflating, wages are starting to say the same, and I'm seeing this everywhere here in Mexico and the U.S. And so I just feel like slowly it's getting harder and harder to live. It's that BlackRock Great Reset project, and so the thoughts on that, and and the music industry today, I feel like is we're not seeing new music really, and I feel like the whole model, it's difficult for musicians to make a living. No.
Very, yeah. This is definitely not where my income comes from. With everything moving to streaming. I mean, the way that works is if you stream somebody's stuff, they get 0.009 cents per song stream. And then once that goes to them, you can't just upload music onto a streaming platform. You have to go through a distribution company, like the one that flagged my song. So then it goes to your distributor, and then they take a cut of that fraction of a penny. So in order to even like make a noticeable dent in someone's pocket, you would need millions of streams. So streaming, that's how everyone gets their music. Of course, it's sold to people under, hey, look how convenient this is. Just go to this app and you have everything. It's like, all right, well, at the expense of AI gatekeepers as far as who can upload what, and surely at the expense of the artists themselves, because nobody can really monetize that effectively unless you have billions of streams. So that's that. As far as making a living, I think people would have to get very creative with that. Live shows is still a way. I really hope people decide to keep leaving their house and not wanting everything to just be on a screen. But I think that the biggest challenge that myself and many others in this generation of upcoming musicians face is nobody goes to shows anymore to like see who the local artists are. I mean, if I look at like any local music scene I've lived in, with the exception of pre-2020 Los Angeles, right? They had a good one. But like whether it's Nashville, because I lived there, or whether it's where out here in Florida, people want cover bands. They want to hear old songs. They want things on repeat. And that's like devastating to actual artists that have their own music, but then they get in this trap of being a human jukebox just to entertain people. So it's very somatic. It's very gross, in my opinion. So people, I mean, if they want original new music still, they should probably make more of an effort to find out who these artists are, because it's very hard for us to get the music to the people because we have to go through the machine. And the machine, the way the algorithms work, if you talk about anything of substance, already you're on the shit list. That's just a reality. And the amount of work they want you to spend making social media content, it's like, we're already making music, and we also already have full-time jobs and a million other things we're doing and a million other things we got to pay for. And now you want us to spend like hours a day putting content on these psychotic platforms and hoping it doesn't get taken down. Like it's maddening. And so the odds of someone be actually even finding that you're there are not in anybody's favor, unfortunately. That's why I appreciate Substack, because anything I send goes right to somebody's email, and I'm not even dealing with an algorithm. But everybody's kind of choosing to still partake in these apps that are ultimately showing you what they want you to see, not what you want to see. They'll sort of tailor it like that, but not really. Sorry, I just went off on a tangent. What was the other question?
No, you sort of just kind of answered it. And when I was young, I was obsessed with music. I've seen so many bands. U2 10 times, Metallica, The Pogues, Killing Joke. Just off the top of my head, and local bands. Some bands that were small when I saw them, and now they're big. And I just feel like, yeah, as you say, a lot of that's gone by the wayside. I was in Croatia 2 years ago on the Dalmatian coast, and there was a traveling acoustic band, I think 2 or 3 folks, and they were playing by the seaside, and they were really good. They had two albums, and I immediately said, take my money, and I bought the physical CDs. And even though I've got only one old laptop that still takes CDs, that's like I have to put it in the laptop, get the digital download, and take it to my other devices. And I was telling people that this might be like one of the last few live performances that we experience, right, in terms of musicians, because in this sort of future algorithm ghetto, because of the economy, we might not have musicians. They might be replaced, as you said, by, I don't know, just jukeboxes or Spotify. And so, enjoy it while you can. I mean, can you foresee a future where we'll just have like robot bands or something like that?
The reason why I would want to say no is because I know how powerful our thoughts and capabilities of envisioning things are, like as bringing them about is. If I'm going to envision it for a second, because yes, they can, I will try to combat that ×3 with the opposite. But because a lot of us are tapping into what is called chaos magic without even realizing it, with our thoughts alone, let alone speech. But yeah. And people need to realize, or I would like them to realize, that they are consciously choosing, or perhaps unconsciously, but if you're listening to this now, you're consciously voting for that every time you are choosing to, gas up more of what you don't want versus that which you do. Because the way that these algorithms work, it doesn't matter if you hate it. Whatever you are giving your attention to is what takes precedence, and everything else is just dropped off. It does not matter if you like it or don't like it. So if people, because yeah, I can 100%, we already have, I think there's already a label that has a fully AI artist that they've made music videos for. I think that happened a few years ago, which is horrifying and disgusting to me. But yeah, it's either going to be that, or it'll be people towing the line that agree to have Chat GPT write their lyrics. You know what I mean? And some people are actually choosing that from whispers that I've heard here and there, which I have no respect for, because it's incredibly dangerous to surrender and essentially sacrifice your own consciousness to the machine. And that's, some people are going that route. But I think if somebody finds something they like, whether it's a journalist, an author, a poet, a musician, a speaker, just somebody who's, making remedies or teaching people how to be more self-sufficient, you really should go hard in circulating and engaging that information within the machine if you want other people to see it, because that is how that works. Like, it's not enough to just be like, that's so cool, and then leave it, because all this other, BS that people will spend hours just watching, mindless stuff. You are telling the machine that is what is required to keep you on that platform, and for it to continue harvesting your data on every level, not just your preferences, but like your biometric data as well. So people should be, I guess, mindful of that. I would hope they are, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people are, honestly. So it depends on what people want. I mean, we do have choice. I think people forget that they have choice.
I'm a big Nick Cave fan. I saw him perform many years ago in my hometown of Chicago. I think Nico Case opened up. She's great as well. And he gave an interview. He put out an album recently, and he gave an interview, and he talked about this stuff, AI, and he seemed sort of black-pilled. And he was actually saying that it's pretty good when it comes to making music. And I think he said he could foresee it actually eventually, if it goes on, he seemed pretty black-pilled about it. I have to go back and look at that interview. But yeah, any final thoughts for us, on escaping? How do we escape the algorithm ghetto? I think, as you say, try to remain analog, staying human. I like what you mentioned earlier is having in Tennessee people who have parallel economies and systems. And I'm looking into that now because, like, if I'm already, what if they shut off my bank account and I'm in an urban setting, and I'm getting my water I have a utility bill for water. It's not my water. They can shut it off. I might look into having at least, buying some time, having a patch of land where I have my own water and food or being with people like that. So, how do we escape the algorithm ghetto?
I think there's multiple answers to that. What I have seen so far, I'll start with that. I have been to fully self-sustaining off-grid homesteads and communities because if you're living like that, it's not something you can do on your own. So the people that have these lone wolf mentalities will probably become casualties if they cling to that, in all honesty. So you absolutely need in real life community. And I understand people wanting to use tech to reach people, but they're using it as an end, not a means to an end. But if stuff hits the fan, are all your internet friends going to be able to back you up when you got to deal with an emergency? Absolutely not. Like, you have to have in real life connections in your immediate locale. If you don't have them there, then strategic relocation. And for me, what I have seen in these communities that are self-sustaining and off-grid, I mean, it was incredible. Like, to me, I remember I'm going to be vague because I don't want to like give away details of like where or who, obviously, but being on a certain property, certain piece of land once or twice, it was like, I felt like they had arrived. And I just felt, it almost moved me to tears because it was just so like, that's the dream for me. I mean, it's not like fancy mansion, fancy cars, yada, yada. They have everything they need though. And they're free. Like, it's incredible the way that they are living. So that is very real and that is happening. People just need to look for it, but there are a lot of resources for finding that. Obviously be careful, use your discernment because not everybody is fully sane. But it's happening. For me, I because I live in an urban area right now as well. When I was in Tennessee, my goal was to get off the grid. But I had a couple things happen in my personal life. I had to relocate to bounce back from that incident in particular. So now I'm looking at that again. And I'm, wondering if, where I'm at, just as far as even the land and how much, it's been damaged, with this would be a good place or not, I don't know. But I think that ultimately mixed with community is the answer. And when it comes to just staying sane or being able to receive the direction or the inspiration of what the next step is, the biggest thing for me is being able to discern signal from noise and having some sort of practice. For me, it's a spiritual practice where I can work with the process of elimination of that noise and tune into, I don't know if it's my intuition, my soul, if it's God. I can't say that for sure, but when I can get into these spaces of clarity and focus of the mind and a different type of consciousness, that's usually when the direction of whatever the next step is to be will come to me. So it's just a matter of making sure I, as an individual, am allowing time to do that every day, which is very hard to do, especially when you're struggling financially or living in urban areas where there's a lot of interference. So that's the wordy version of what I would suggest.
All right. Well, wide-ranging chat. Enjoyed it very much. I think you said you have a new album that's dropping next year. Will it be available off of Spotify, like where we can purchase the digital through your website or anything like that? To tell us about your projects and where people can find you, follow you, and all that.
Yes. Yeah. So the new album is called Ghost in the Machine. That will be coming out in 2025. I'm not announcing a specific release date yet. But aside from the streaming platforms like Spotify, You can find my music anywhere. So if somebody would want to purchase it, I do have a website. I had to deactivate it because it's getting redone, but that website is Tesstamona.com. Not up yet. It will be up again soon. If somebody wanted to do that now, they could find me on Bandcamp. Bandcamp is, I think, the only platform I know of where people can actually just purchase the songs from musicians, and it's either like $1 a song, or you can give whatever you want. You can name your own price. So Bandcamp for sure. As far as where I'm most active on the interwebs, that would be my Substack, which is Memento Mori Alchemy by Tesstamona on Substack. Otherwise, all other platforms I can be found under the name Tesstamona.
All right. Well, all those links are in the description, and so follow Tesstamona, and it really helps, for myself, for my guests. Just a simple thing that listeners can do is just, you can follow the Substack, subscribe to it, follow Tesstamona on X, subscribe to the YouTube. Just a simple little thing, but that's a huge help, especially if enough people do that. So thank you for your music, for coming on Geopolitics and Empire, Tesstamona, and I guess see you in the Algorithm Ghetto.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Feel like I do in this algorithm ghetto. Censored, so I'm talking in code, so my thought crimes don't show. Any word you say against the big they puts you on mute, and if it's too true, we'll freeze your bank. Do you think we'll see the gulags one day? Tell me, what algorithm are you in? What flavor does your propaganda come in? It'll turn friend against friends. What algorithm are you in? Get Did your TV tell you to hate your family and friends? Did your TV make you sell your soul to fight for them? Keep the peasants fighting, keep the peasants fighting, keep them all divided, they will not survive it. Keep the peasants fighting, keep the peasants fighting, oh, they will not survive. Smart cities being built around us, we're getting dumber by the day. So neurotic, can't maintain relations, break yourself for slave wage nation. Could it be that it's all part of the design? Have you heard the real plan for AI? Did you read Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars? Turning people to cattle has always been the goal. What algorithm are you in? What flavor does your propaganda come in? It'll turn friends against friends. What algorithm are you in? Distracted, keep them all poisoned. Don't let them have critical thinking or focus. Hypnotize them with TikTok and Adderall. Kill them slow with Prozac and fentanyl. Potions in a lab tested on the population. Fuck around with the little gene mutation. Pay the feds and corporations to censor information.
Have you noticed the net around us? The algorithm ghetto. Don't know where to start, it's got us so entangled in both micro and macro. But listen, your thoughts are not always your own in this system. There's a war for the human spirit. They use interference, draining our humanity, and we allow it. Every time we trade molecules for pixels and convenience for surveillance. Nobody these days maintains honest relations. Why? Terrified of our source of life, we run from love. Trauma-based mind control in every analog and digital. Algorithms are not just external, this is also our mental. Recognize Stockholm Syndrome. If they tell you to hate your neighbor, they're asking you for your slave labor. Do not comply. When divided, we are blinded by the real threat. All that we have is each other. Don't forget, friend.
Tell